Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of The Lowdown by Analysis.tech. I'm John Reimer. I'm going to be one of your hosts today. I'm one of the principals at Analysis.tech. And today we are going to have Francis Rants episode 2. We kicked this off recently where we give Francis Carden a platform to unfurl his passion for
Only free speech.
topics around abstracted development, low code development, AI, et al. And today we're going to be talking about one of Francis's top passions, I think, Francis, which is models.
Oh, yes. Models. Oh, models. Yes, I see.
Cheryl Teagues.
Not that kind of model, but anyway.
In the software world, we know what models are.
Well, let's start with that. Rob, do you want to kick us off here?
I'm just flashing back to like Francis and I reconnecting after many years down at a conference, and the flirtation was first kind of starting up that maybe he should kind of join us at Analysis.tech. And he described it as we could be like those old men in the Muppets that like yell insults at people. It's like, so
yeah. Him down below. Below.
Those old men got to be in the halftime show of the World Cup finals, so they're doing something right.
Hopefully they were making fun of the rest of the halftime show at the World Cup finals. But all right, Francis, models, not the kind on magazine covers like Cheryl Teagues magazine covers. How old is this guy? This is becoming a big thing though, right? And this has been a rant that you've been on for a long time. But I think it's a rant whose time has come, right? As we're deploying more and more raw AI code out into the world. Tell us, what is the role of a model in this emerging world? Why should people be thinking about the world in terms of models?
Well, in theory, they should have always been thinking about models. If we break a model down and say it's structured, it's the structured code and systems that make everything clearly understandable, maintainable, and changeable. That's the ideal world. Object-oriented programming, reusable logic, centralized and governed rules, etc. But we love code for the last 40 to 50 years. And so whilst the models grew up in 3GL, 4GL, low code, no code world, plethora of developers just like to write code. Okay. So, but and there's all sorts of things against models. Firstly, if you're a coder, you're out of a job. I mean, not to a large extent, but to some extent. And I think that the models just lost the battle. The low code 4GLs just lost the battle because coders always won over, right? The developers and the IT team always won over business. No, we're going to do it this way because we know best. And so that's what happened. Roll forward to today and they're saying, oh, we're going to use AI to generate code because we can teach it code that's structured. Well, holy mackerel, that's a model then. If code is so beautifully structured and architected, I'd argue that's even a model, right? So now we can say that if we could describe all the execution of the business logic, the programs, the systems, the applications, the interfaces, etc., in a clear model, descriptive narrative, right? Very clear. We can all understand it. We describe what we want. Then we feed that in through AI. AI learns it. We feed in what we want through AI, and AI says, oh, I'll pull all that together for you. And here you go. And then, oh, we've already done that. So I'll pull that from over there. And it becomes repeatable and reusable. Now we have structure to all of our applications, which is the antichrist of the 50 or 5 decades of spaghetti code that lives in these systems that we have to support and maintain. Does that make sense?
Let me follow up a little bit if I could. All right, because there's also another world at which the term model can live, right? And that would be sort of like, let's think about this in terms of an orchestration model, right? So if I listen to what's coming out of Pega, Camunda, Bazaji, Appian, all the kind of traditional process vendors, case vendors, we also have a model that can manage state, it can manage integration, it can manage processes over time, and it can also ingest workloads, right? Payloads, right? So in this world, I can build whatever I want in Claude or whatever AI first language I choose. It's a payload, right? It's managed as a payload within a process. I ingest it, I ingest a payload, I do something with it, and then I move on with the rest of the process. Now, ultimately, that Claude code can become more model driven, encapsulated, but it also can execute within models that we have today, which suddenly are coming back into vogue. Am I crazy?
You're not crazy, but there's a danger, Will Robinson, right? Which is
Danger.
if we use AI just to generate unstructured code, I don't think we're ready yet. The AI is quite ready yet to manage and support and maintain that code. If it is, then I would argue that's potentially a model because it's now defined, it's structured. Who cares? Because you'll never need to look at it. You'll never consider it legacy. You can throw any change you want at it at any time. It rebuilds it and it runs 10 minutes later after running through from testing. In fact, we're not there yet. We're not even close to that. I don't believe, right? Someone can prove me wrong. But if we've got something that can execute, well, let's work backwards. Something's got to run what we've defined, right? Something's got to take what we define, whether that's through vibe coding, low code, metadata, whatever, structure, and then get the runtime to consume that and run it. That is clearly what we need. And in fact, I've argued now, and another part of my rants is that 95% of most businesses in the same space, their peers, it should be exactly the same. We don't need a million copies of a driving license validation or an onboarding process, etc. It's the same. And in fact, that is the whole heart of LLMs, isn't it? It's learning the repetitive stuff. If there's huge amounts of variability, just go do a Google search and fix it yourself, or just use AI to put that variability together. So the model when you apply AI and you train AI on a model or anything that's structured and understood, then you could go from vibing, and you could almost say that it's, English or, well, any language, right? You describe what you want. The AI goes, oh, what do you want to run it in? Well, I want to run it in Pega. I want to run it in code in Claude, God forbid. But anyway, we could. But as long as there's some structure to what the execution runtime is going to consume, and it's well understood, you now have the ability to build anything from any language, from a blueprint like Pega provides, but I think it's almost like the models have been waiting 50 years for AI. It's because AI learning a model is better than trying to say, well, we've got to go learn Pega, we've got to learn Appian, we've got to learn out systems. Well, we'll teach AI those systems, right? And then we can vibe to Pega, we can vibe to out systems, we can vibe to Appian. And
I
that's,
think
I think that's
we got to
wonderful.
take a step. I think we really should take a step back here. If 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 there's a debate about the value of models, then I think part of that is because we're models. If models do not have recognized value independently, so independent of the code that implements them, if they don't have that, if they don't have recognized value, then of course you're going to question, why should I worry about models? The thing is that everything, even code that's generated by an LLM, does have some model, has some structure, as you've been saying. So if there, and Francis, I think what you're pointing out is that if that model is explicit, if you can work with it, you can configure it, you can change it independent of the code that it then implements,
And I don't think we're there yet.
that will be helpful. I just keep thinking, if you were going to build if you had decided to build a house, and you let's say, look ahead in the future, and you could go to Claude and say, build me a house, and you describe, how many rooms you want and blah blah blah, and it starts generating this house. At some point, something's going to arise where you're going to run into a problem with plumbing or something like that, and you're going to need to know, what the hell is the architecture? What is the model here? And if it's not explicit, you're in big trouble.
I can't get my head around the analogy you're trying to make around a home. You can get homes printed in concrete, so we know we can get a base model, right? I mean, But business isn't quite like that. Business anticipates that the acceleration of changes and the granularity of changes that are required across the business requires, it's not just plumbing. This will be down to, we need to change this tap in this bathroom because specifications or governance has changed or water pressure has changed. There's so many nuances in applications, and that's expected by business but never delivered by IT, right? It's like, we need this change to the application you just built for us. Well, the programmers have moved on. That's going to take 2 years. Here's our backlog. Whereas if we have a well-defined model, whether it's code, which I don't think we're there yet, I haven't seen it and witnessed it, it will come. Whether you vibe code or you build in a model of code or you build in a low-code model platform, the idea is I can describe it and I can change it later. And it's so well understood. The change is imminent, immediate, and executable. And underneath these models, whether it's code or not, must be the security and governance that guarantees that what's running is safe. There can be no ambiguity, right? The model dictates there's no ambiguity around making that application safe.
There's another piece of this, Francis, that I think is important, which is, if we have a model, if it's a process model or a data model or an application model, a business person can look at representations of that model and understand what it is, and they can understand.
I don't think they need to.
Whether it's right or not.
Eventually,
hold on.
Well, go on.
Business people can't look at code and understand what the structure is, and that's death. Because
the only way you can change code is to have someone who understands code and then understands what that code was doing. That's a whole different ballgame from you feeling safe that the model has got your back. It's executing what needs to get done safely because the model's been built and proven thousands and thousands of times over. Well, it's if you get a team of 1,000 developers build an application with a spaghetti code and logic, etc., then when a change comes along, you don't even know where to start. There's no concept of structure. Now,
100%.
There's great intentions of structure. And of course, business can't understand code. I would argue the best developers can't understand code and have no patience to do so.
Well, it's probably not somebody else's code, right?
Nobody wants
even
to
their own. I've
experienced
my developers don't like touching their own code a year later. They moved on.
So John, you come from a background, you not exclusively, but over the last decade or so in a model-driven low-code world. I come from spent the last 10 plus years or so in this digital process automation and case management world. Obviously, this is a form of passion for you, Francis. So we're all kind of preaching to the choir here with each other. But let me step out of the choir for a second and maybe tee up our next conversation. If you're deploying to a model, you're in some license-driven world and it's freaking expensive and it's freaking restrictive. I can't do what I need to do when I want to do it. I end up dropping in a code and I'm paying for some crazy license consumption, blah, blah based model that's freaking expensive versus these AI models. They're kind of free. I mean, I know they're
not
free.
Really.
But
cheap.
that's pervasive thinking at the moment. So I mean, we need to see that up, guys.
Yeah, we should talk about that next time. There's always a gotcha. It sounds so simple to say, well, we don't pay for code, anything we execute in runtime in code, but we do pay for something that executes in a model that has its own runtime because that company, that platform vendor has to get some revenue and some income. I don't think it's a black and white in terms of just saying, well, everything's free then, and therefore all these vendors will disappear. There is value to paying someone else in perpetuity because we've seen this now with hardware, software, compute power. Look, AI and tokens. It's all
Can
we're
I
doing.
Scale the stuff, right? Can I scale it safely? Can I bring in new classes of developers and scale it safely? You know, there's a 1,000 implications to this, but you hit the nail on the head, Francis. It's not black or white. It's not an either or.
It's trade.
But I do think the pervasive thinking is going towards this is free. This is where everything's going. There's no room for models and platforms in my world, and I think that's a crazy overreaction as well.
Absolutely right.
Should we tee this up for the next rant, guys?
Let's end on this then, right? I'll end on this because we're like overlapping to the pricing, but it's a very exciting thing. I've given a lot of consideration to who should buy whom. Should an AI vendor buy a model vendor? Because if this becomes pervasive to that extent, the AI companies need more models, not just the spaghetti of code, or they'll create their own. So do they buy or build? Because this is the future of software. Anyway,
So
rant.
I'll just kind of throw it out, look, OpenAI is doing really interesting things with workflow models, right?
Yep.
Antigone just reposted Lovable CEO talking about the importance of building in governance. So they know it, right? But let's dig into it next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.